This is an intro. Who needs an intro? I don't need an intro. This is just a vape show. It's just a vape show. Vape show. This is an intro. Who needs an intro? I don't need an intro. This is just a vape show. It's just a vape show. Vape show.
YouTube, what is up? I'm your homeboy Josh, back at you, and today we're taking a look at this little guy. This is the Flipped from a company called GLXY, GLXY, out of Asia. The device comes in this jewel style case, very reminiscent of a lot of geek vape devices actually. In fact, it even has that sort of fold out book style inside cover, and you've got, what's that? Yeah, it is your own geek vape style tool, the same tool, the two Allen keys and the Phillips head. What it is it is the tiniest, teeniest little RDTA sort of Genesis style device that you have ever seen. This thing is for you super mini lovers out there, the teeny tiny toppers like the Derringer, the Bambino, the tiny ones, you know, that sort of thing. I mean, this thing has a super teeny barrel. You've got yourself a spare tank. Look how cute that little tank is. That thing is teeny, tiny, teeny. It is a 1 milliliter capacity only. Yeah, 1 milliliter capacity in the tank. And it is smaller than most RDAs, full-size RDAs are. I was shocked when I saw how tiny it was in person. I knew it was a mini just by the emails I had received, but seeing it in person, wow, this thing is so tiny. You also get your extras, extra screws, extra O-rings, and it goes perfectly with these sorts of mini mods out there. I really like it on a mini mod. That's how I've been rocking it. I've been using it on the Vape Zoom. It also kind of works really well on something like the Storm 100. I like it on something like that. I don't like putting it on anything too big. You know, something like, say, the Taro Pro. Something like the Taro Pro, it just looks kind of dwarfed up there. You know, it just looks like this tiny little thing up. It's just aesthetics, you know. I mean, it's smaller next to just even a standard RDA, you know. Not that much smaller, but I like putting them, you know, the mini toppers on smaller devices. I guess that's just the OCD in me. It just kind of feels like it fits, so therefore I have to do it. I don't know why. Anyway. And I vape it at about 30 watts. What I have in here is just a single coil build. It is made for single coils, this device. The deck is kind of a wire trap configuration with 2 Phillips head screws on either side, and it's made so that you anchor your leads into the space underneath those screw heads, and then the coil sits sort of perpendicular to where the 2 screws go, and the wicks sort of drape over on either side of the coil. That's the sort of wire trap that we're working with this device. So, I mean, you can't fit a whole lot of craziness in there. It's definitely meant for the single coil build. It gets the job done for those single coils, but there's not a lot of space for anything too crazy, which is fine because it's not a device that's meant for anything too crazy, I don't think. It's meant for standard wire builds. Maybe you could fit something like a fuse Clapton in there, a micro fuse Clapton, but I would be concerned about the heat that it would provide having such a small chamber. And the wicking holes are super generous. I have not had any issues with dry hits or anything like that. And the way I wick this device is I don't bring any of the wicking into the tank itself. I just kind of let the wick sit right on top of the wicking holes. And as I vape, it's being tilted, and that is what is helping to keep my wicks good and saturated and bring juice to the coil. You can put some good thick wick here to drive juice to that coil, and you'll keep it nice and saturated the way that you sort of tilt the tank while you're vaping. This is something like 8 wraps with 24 gauge. It ohms out at about 0.76, 0.75 ohms. And I'll usually vape it in that, you know, 20 to 30 watt range. Maybe I'll turn it up as high as 40. Well, let's see. I never turned it up that high. I'll try it. It works at 40, but it's tight, and that's kind of like the precipice of what I would do. I wouldn't bring it up any higher than that, you know what I mean? The airflow just isn't there for it. And it's not meant to be. It's not meant to have that kind of airflow. For what it is, it works pretty well because, you know, with that 1 milliliter tank, you honestly don't blow past it too quick. Since I'm vaping it at a lower wattage, that 1 milliliter capacity kind of fits. It doesn't, I don't burn through that juice quite as fast as I would think I would. This can get me to and from work. This can make it through a break, a 15-minute break of me chain vaping. You know, it works no problem for something like that. Now, I actually like the size, and for a 1 milliliter capacity, it actually does pretty good. I'm not putting anything in this that's going to suck down too much juice really quick. I'm not throwing fused Claptons in here. I'm not throwing alien coils in here. The airflow's not there for that, I don't feel like. It's like a fixed airflow, and there's smaller airflow holes. I mean, it's a restrictive lung hit. Air holes are fixed. They're non-adjustable. So what you see is what you get here. There's something like 2 millimeters by 3 millimeters. And flavor is pretty good. I kind of wish that the air holes were a little bit higher, because what I notice is that they come in right at the screws that anchor down the coil. So if they were a little bit higher, they would come up over those screws. Because right now I feel like the screws kind of interrupt that airflow a bit. Like if I turn it to the side, it's not gonna hit the coil directly, but it's not gonna be interrupted by the screws. And it broadens out the draw a little bit that way. I mean, it doesn't turn it into a cloud machine, turning it to the side that way or anything, but I feel turbulence in the draw when they're directed right where the screws are. But when they're right where the screws are, they're positioned right at the coil, which is where I would like to vape them anyway. So I kind of wish that the air holes were a little bit higher. I don't mind so much that I can't adjust it. I feel like for the sort of vape that it provides, the airflow is kind of perfect. It works really well right where it is. The top cap has this kind of, alongside you've got this design, kind of like a blip on a heart monitor, or a radio wave, I guess. I really like the thickness of the top cap. It makes it feel like a quality product. There's nothing like thin metal just to make things feel cheap, and this device doesn't feel cheap. It's got thick, good metal up top. The machining looks very nice on the inside of the barrel. Everything there feels really great. Top cap has the beginnings of sort of a conical sort of shape to it, in the hopes that it'll provide a bit better flavor. And it does provide some pretty decent flavor for its size, I gotta say. On the bottom it is serialized. This is number 3464. It says GLXY up top. And it's got Asian symbols on the sides too. To be honest, the deck itself feels kind of cheap. It's the one part of this device that really feels cheap to me, is the deck. The machining on it is not as good as the machining on the rest of the device. You see lots of places where the CNC machine just ripped the deck to shreds. It just looks kind of, ugh. It's not as the quality that the rest of the device shows. And the screws, they kind of look and feel a little cheap too. It definitely has a cool little look about it, the way that it's all set up. And I really like the interchangeable drip tips that it came with. The one that it comes packaged with, configured with, I'm not as crazy about. It's just kind of like this black Delrin drip tip that kind of has a sort of top hat kind of thing going on about it. I'm not a huge fan of the looks of it, but the other one that it comes with, I guess it's kind of an Ultim kind of material. I just love the look of it. I just think it looks badass. I think it looks really cool altogether. And your spare drip tip sits in there, and that's the one I've been using. I love, love, love this little drip tip. My only gripe about this drip tip is that it is not standard 510, so I cannot use it on everything else. I love, love, love this drip tip. I wish that I could find more drip tips just like this that I could put on anything else. I love it. It's comfortable, it's super comfortable, it doesn't get hot, and you can drip right through just like you're meant to with an RDTA. So this is, you know, a tiny 1 milliliter tank, so that RDTA function comes in handy where I can direct drip onto those coils as well if I have a moment where I can't just fill the tank right then. The only thing that I question about it really is the fill port. The fill ports I'm not a huge fan of. The way that they did it is that they sort of drilled in 2 holes on either side of the deck. One with a big hole, one with a small hole. Now these guys are your wicking holes, of course, and these guys are for juicing the tank, filling it up. This I think is like the air escape hole, and this is where you fill in from, whether you're using a unicorn bottle or a dropper bottle. You sort of shove it right on in here and press it down. And And what happens consistently is as I'm pushing juice into here, juice is coming up through here. And it makes it really inconvenient to fill this thing. It's kind of annoying, and I'm not a fan of the way that this thing fills up. I get that they need to put a fill mechanism in here. I get that the hope is that this will make it so that you've got enough space where you can fill it, but it's not going to leak. At the same time, it's just not enough pressure for it to fill efficiently. It takes too long to fill this thing. What I would change on it, if anything, is the fill mechanism. I really don't like the way that it works. There are two tiny little holes drilled into the top of the deck. One is to kind of let air escape while you're filling it up, and the other one is so that you can plunge juice in there. What happens is that the pressure is still too much, that juice kind of bubbles up through the little air hole, and you kind of have to wait for the air to sort of dissipate in there and for the juice level to go back down on top of the deck, and then plunge a little bit more, and then wait, and then plunge a little bit more. And it takes forever to fill this 1 milliliter tank. It shouldn't take that long. It makes it way more inconvenient than it needs to be. There has to be an easier way to fill this thing, guys. Come on. Not to mention, with all that juice that gets trapped on top of the deck, it turns it temporarily gurgly until you vape it down. Not a fan. But the deck being as shallow as it is, it only takes about a pull or two for it to stop being gurgly. And then it vapes fine until you have to fill the tank again. Overall, I like the device for what it is. Does it fit my personal vaping style? Not really, but for someone that likes basic builds, that likes very small toppers, that likes 22 millimeter devices, that likes single coils, yeah, it's pretty good. And good flavor too, for what it is. Anyway guys, until next time, I'm your homeboy Josh. Vape on, Vapers.